Can natties fight back against the PED abuse that is currently ruining the fitness industry? Well, to find out, we're going to be looking at one of the best physiques currently, and that is Mike Thurston. He looks absolutely insane, one of the best chests out there, and in my opinion, he's 100% natural, and I'll discuss why later in the video. Let's have a look exactly how he's training to achieve the physique he has. And no, I'm not going to say genetics, because I know that's going to come up in the comment section, and yes, he's got insane elite level genetics. However, he's still training exceptionally well, and we need to look into it. So in order to do this, I'm going to go back a year when he's doing his push-pull legs, which is one of the more effective splits. Now currently he's doing this 5x5 split, and if you want to check it out, go watch his more recent videos. I'm not a massive fan of this, and he said he wants to try and get a better work-life balance, all of that balance, and training of course. So we're going to go look back when he was focused on training. Hello, my name is Peter Truick, and I'm a qualified and still practicing full-time physiotherapist. If you haven't been here before, welcome to the channel. Now, over the years, I've been subscribed to Mike Thurston for ages, and I've watched a ton of his videos, and I've identified 3 things that he does that are outstanding and exceptional, and if you implement all of these 3 things, you will build muscle. Before we jump into it, I want you guys to analyze the bench press or incline bench press. We've got Mike Thurston doing it, we've got Louis Armstrong doing it, and we've got Rob Lipset doing it, all on the same day. Tell me what you guys think down in the comment section below. After we've gone through these 3 things, we're going to come back to the bench press, and then we can have a look and see, is he implementing all of them during this lift. If we look at Mike actually lifting the weights, his technique for 99% of the lifts is absolutely impeccable. So his squat, his bench press, his rows, everything he does with outstanding technique. If we look at him doing the chest press, right, he's got a great technique for 90% of the lift. It's just in that last depth position where he allows his shoulder blades to elevate and tilt forward, so anterior tilt. He's losing the tension on his pecs. Now that is a minor change, and will it make much of a difference? Possibly not, but we all know that stretch position is extremely important, so I think he could change that slightly, and that is just controlling the shoulder blades, and if he needs to throw in the towel trick, that might do it for him. Now with all of his pulling movements, they're outstanding. I literally can't change anything or adjust anything. They're fantastic. In all his lifts, he controls the eccentric. He likes to do a 1-to-3 ratio, so 1 second concentric, so 1 second row, 3 second going back, and he does use that for legs and for chest. That is a very difficult way of lifting, but it puts a lot of tension on the muscle, and it is exceptional. His rowing movements, as I said, I can't comment more. He does them perfectly. Just watch the footage and enjoy. So while you're watching Mr. Thurston rowing, have a look at how he's stabilizing the rest of his body. Not all his rows have chest support. Now the chest support will stabilize it for you, so fair enough, but in his other lifts, he is stabilizing everything and trying to use his back as much as possible, and he also uses wraps, which takes the forearms out of it. Now I will say, if you're using wraps, don't stop squeezing. Squeezing activates, so you can actually get a better contraction of the lats, of the rhomboids, of all the back muscles, rotator cuff included. If you squeeze a fist, use the wraps to stop grip strength limiting your movement. Don't stop using your grip. In one of the clips, Mike is doing lat raises on a machine. Now that is insane, right? It's a really good machine, and his technique was flawless. There are 2 problems here. 1, it's got fat grips. 2, he didn't have his wraps, and he knew this, and he said that in the video. Now if you find yourself in the situation where Mike is, where he's standing in front of a machine with no wraps and fat grips, and you have an injury or an irritation on the tennis elbow sides, on the outside lateral epicondyle, do not do this machine. If you don't, it's absolutely fine, but the problem is with fat grips, with a slightly flexed wrist loading upwards, which will load your extensors, it's really difficult, and they will fail before the lateral delts. So use wraps, but if you don't have wraps, pop the fat grip mid-forearm in the nice meaty bit. Don't put it on the bony bit of your wrist, but in the nice meaty bit, squeeze a fist and work from there with the weights touching your arm and not holding onto those fat grips. If we look at Mike's exercises for the tricep, his technique is absolutely flawless, really focusing on the control of the movement, as I've said before, and he does go into some partials at the end of it. Nothing more to add there. If you mimic that, your triceps will grow. And he does work with multiple exercises for different muscle groups. So if we look at it, he does an overhead variant, he does a standing variant. His knowledge of exercise choice is really, really good. So he's able to swap things out, chop and change them, and he doesn't do the same things all the time. Although doing the same things all the time is good because then you can track progressive overload. If you have got slightly reduced or underdeveloped lateral tricep heads, like myself with a medial tricep head, because all of the stuff I do is either overhead or sort of in line or behind my body where the long head's working the hardest, then it's a really good thing to throw in. Now I know Mike's knowledge of exercise is fantastic. He is very, very keen on learning and he's learned a lot over the years, which makes him so good. Now he doesn't always do them out in front of his body, he swaps them up. But if you're a creature of habit, I would suggest rather go into the stretch position there, where you can get a nice stretch on the long head and work through the stretch, or go into the neutral or slightly behind your body and load the weight up exceptionally heavy. I wouldn't play too much in that mid portion, but it's absolutely fine if you do, especially if you're working on your lateral or medial tricep head. When it comes to Mike's rear delts, he does, in my opinion, make a slight mistake. So when you're looking at the rear delt as a muscle, there's lots of muscles that do that. So take your shoulder into abduction and extension, the rear delts being one of them. If we look at the others, they are the rotator cuff. So if we look at the delt structure and how it works, it does initiate more when the elbows are behind the body. This is where the stretch comes into it for the rear delts and why it doesn't work so well. And Jeff made a video saying my rear delts have shrunk, and he went about it the wrong way. So I think if you look at it, leaning forward, he locks that position in, so he's trying to isolate the rear delt. But in that position, the delt's not on much of a stretch, right? The rotator cuff is. So you've got muscles like infraspinatus, teres minor, teres major to some degree, and then we pull him back. So he could be doing this better. If you're gonna lock this movement, now it is a lot harder to do. Lock the movement in retraction, not in protraction. So that means don't lock it with your shoulders rounded forward. Lock it with your chest open, rounded back. And remember that when your elbow goes behind the body, that's when the rear delts are gonna really be activated. And you can test them, you can feel they don't get too hard. And right there, when the elbow crosses, put your hand on the rear delt, you will feel it popping. You'll feel it just grab on. That's what we want. You wanna train your rear delt so that when you go take a shit the next day and you wipe your ass, they start cramping. That is a good indication that you've hit your delts quite hard. Moving on to legs. Now again, there's not an awful lot I can say about the way he does his squats. Yes, he's using a pendulum squat machine, which is fantastic. It really does hit the quads. And what he says about the plates on so many machines, so not the plates you load, the foot plates, sorry, is absolutely true. A lot of the machines tend to pull your ankles into too much dorsiflexion, so it's at 90 degrees to the movement. The problem here comes that your ankle limits the amount of depth that you get, so that your lower back has to compensate, or your hips really have to open wide, and it takes the tension off of the quads. I know it doesn't put a lot of tension onto the lower back. Your lower back can flex, believe it or not, but it does limit the amount of knee over toe movement we can get. So on this machine, it's slightly angled forward, so your toes are pointed forward, takes them out of the equation completely. If you're in a machine where you feel you just can't get that quad compression, try put a plate, so a weight plate, on the foot plate to elevate the heel, and that will be an absolute game changer for you. And again, he's doing the 1 second down, 1 second up, 3 second down. I mean, I can't say much more there. There's only one thing I can add to his leg workout. Now with his hamstrings, he's doing the lying hamstring curl, which is brilliant. I prefer the lying hamstring curl. No, the stretch, yes, the stretch is better on the seated hamstring curl, but the contraction for me is better on the lying hamstring curl. Anyway, enough waffling there. He tilts his pelvis into a posterior pelvic tilt, so he's tucking it backwards. Now if we look where the hamstrings attached, that is going to be shortening the hamstrings. Again, it's easier to lock the pelvis in that position. We're stronger to lock it in that position. It's the core switching on. So instead of crunching down, it's pulling the pelvis up. That's absolutely fine. It's easier to lock it, so we're getting more hamstring. However, if we look at the stretch aspect now, in a lying hamstring curl, if we tilt the pelvis the other way into an anterior tilt, so arching the back, as long as we hold it there, the back muscles are working isometrically, and that is fine. Your back muscles are designed to work isometrically. They stabilize the spine, so that's absolutely okay. Unless you're going with insane weights, do it with an anterior pelvic tilt. Technique-wise, and I can tell Mike really enjoys getting better at the gym, and a lot of people do, including myself, which is awesome to see. That's probably why I like watching his videos, because he's constantly getting better. I'll give him an A+ for technique. Let's hop on to the next one, which is intensity. Now, a lot of people think intensity is going into the gym, moving weights as quick as possible, not resting well, and just going for it. Right? That's not intensity. By no way, shape or form is that intensity. Intensity is working exceptionally difficult, pushing yourself to failure and sometimes beyond failure. When it comes to Mike's intensity, he does 3 things exceptionally well. Number 1, he progressively overloads. Number 2, he uses things like stretch partials. And number 3, he includes drop sets. If you're new to the gym, I would only focus on progressive overload. You don't need to incorporate partial reps at the end of a set. You don't need to incorporate drop sets. However, if you're more experienced in the gym, I would be in the camp that you need to incorporate these things. You need to incorporate techniques which increase the intensity of your workout, and these 2 are perfect. And this leads us perfectly onto our final step, and that is his programming. Now you're saying, well, his exercise choices are what everyone's doing. Yes, they are. And everyone does them because they work. But Mike's programming is on a different level. If you just listen to what he's saying and how he records every single detail of every lift, weight used, exercise used, number of reps, and he talks about his programming there saying, oh, we're not going to do drop sets in week 1 of the program. We're going to build that up and then start incorporating them later on. So there he's putting in some progressive overload, adding in some intensity techniques. His programming is flawless. I really like the fact that he records everything, he tracks everything. That is something different to what a lot of people are doing. And if you've read the book called Surrounded by Idiots, I'm not saying Mike's an idiot, far from it, but it looks into personality types. So you get red, very loud, outgoing people, then you get green, which a bit more creative, then you get yellow, a bit more chaotic, and then you get blue. Now blue is what Mike is, I'm fairly certain, because it's structure. Everything has to be put in a box, everything has to be recorded. You'll see blue people walking around the gym with their pen and pencil, right? That is a blue person to the T, and that's what makes Mike exceptionally good when it comes to progressive overloading, which is probably one of, if not the most important aspect when it comes to building muscle. I will say this, if you are not a blue person, let's say you yellow a bit more all over the shop with your mind, which a lot of people are, and that's absolutely fine. Learn to work with that. Don't try and say, right now I'm gonna have to take my pen and paper to the gym, because I can tell you now, you've thought about it before, if not done it before, and maximum you would do it for is 3 days, guaranteed. Try find something else. So keep the focus in your mind, pick the exercises you enjoy, and just make sure you're pushing exceptionally hard. I've got one minor flaw with Mike's programming and structure, and it is minuscule, but it has been shown to make a difference, and that is his exercise order. So in a lot of them, Mike would go from doing a chest exercise, then to a shoulder exercise, then back to a chest exercise, for example. Same with legs, he'll do quads, hamstrings, quads, hamstrings. That is okay, but we know with the cumulative effect of training the same muscle first until fatigue and then swapping to a different one, you get slightly better gains. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, that's going to make your legs massive if you're like me with chicken legs. It's not, right? But it can make a tiny difference. So if you're choosing between going 1, 1, 1, 1 or doing all of your quads and then your hamstrings, do all of your quads and then your hamstrings. So for these 2 camps, intensity, I'm scoring Mike an A+, and for his structure, I'm scoring him an A++ for half of it, and for the other half, an A. What I suggest you guys do if you want to build more muscle as a natty, try implementing these 3 things. Now, I'm not saying train exactly like Mike, but focus on your technique. Make sure your technique is as good as you can get it. That is step number 1. Step number 2, add in some intensity techniques, especially if you're more experienced in the gym. It's not going to hurt, and if anything, it's really going to blow up your gains. And the 3rd is programming. Now, not everyone is a blue personality. Not everyone can program like Mike, but make sure you've got some form of programming in your mind on a piece of paper somewhere that you can track it. And if that is just remembering what number pin you put the stack in that week and going a bit more the next week, that is absolutely fine. But make sure you're progressive overloading and make sure your programming is sound and makes sense. So back to the bench press. Did you guys see anything there? Now we can look at the cadence, look at the speed at which Mike is pushing, look at the weight which Mike is pushing. Mike towers over especially Louis, but he's a lot bigger than both of them. He's probably bigger than both of them combined, yet his weight is not exceptionally heavier. But look at his control, look at his technique, look at his focus on the squeeze or on the stretch position. Look at how he's lifting the weight, not the weight that he's lifting. And I mean, that is just flawless. That is what us as physios love to see when it comes to movement analysis. When we look at Louis and Rob just throwing the weight around, trying to push as much as possible, that's not great. There's no stability on their side. Yeah. Mike's muscles are under a lot more tension, even though the weight he's using is not a lot heavier. So there's a lot of speculation on the internet. Greg Doucette, Greg Doucette. You probably hear me somewhere in Canada. But anyway, he is like, Mike, there's no way on this planet Mike is natural. I would like to think otherwise. I think, looking at Mike's videos, and I've never met him, he comes across as a really honest person, but there are certain things that would lead me to think that he is natural. One, his physique doesn't change. And if you go back 2-3 years on Instagram, right, his physique is pretty much the same as it is now. Maybe minor changes, exactly what we would see in someone who is natural. If we look at his skin, I'm not saying if someone's skin's good, they're natural 100%, that's not the case. But he doesn't have that ultra thin, paper thin skin. He doesn't have lots of acne. Again, it doesn't mean he's natural. But the one thing that does almost mean he's natural in my book is the fact that his lifts are not insanely strong. Now, I'm not saying he's weak, he's stronger than I am, obviously he's a unit. So Mike is massive, right? But his strength fits perfectly with his size. He's not like a 16-year-old who you see on Instagram bench pressing 500 pounds and he only started lifting 6 months ago. That's not the case with Mike. He's over the years and years and years he's been training, put on little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit of weight. And that is exactly what we'd see in someone who's natural. There's no big fluctuations. It's pretty spot on. The one thing that he hasn't done that would really cement his natty status, and that is his blood work. And I do understand he might have some personal reasons for not putting that out there. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider smashing that thumbs up button. And hopefully one of these days I can earn that subscription from you. Until then, we'll see you in the next one.